It's truly an honor to have all of you with us. I want to take this opportunity to also recognize our board of directors and the members of the board's Women's Committee, whose guidance and commitment shaped this event today. I would ask you to please raise your hand or stand up as I mention your name. Pina Albarelli Aroni, who's the president of COSTI's board. Okay. Nikki Mezzo, also a board member with COSTI. Julie Mehfooz Rezvani couldn't be with us today, but she's an instrumental part of the board. Rupa Banerjee. Julia Papa. Okay. Gina Scarella. Archana Mendekar, who's back there, over there. Okay. And Janet Hallett, who's played such an important role in today's event. I also want to recognize COSTI's communications and marketing team, Karen Trebele, who you just met, Anam, Danuta, Alexandria. I know them all by first name. They're the amazing women who registered you in. They have done everything here, including putting together these little takeaway gifts on the table. So to our amazing, amazing team in communications and marketing. And let me recognize, and I'm not like a very cool presenter, so I need you to be the cool ones as I say this. Most importantly, this is a forum for COSTI's staff, the remarkable women whose expertise, skills, and experience transform lives every day. You have women in this room who provide meaningful employment to those in need. They resettle refugees who come through traumatic journeys. They provide upskilling and education for those who want to lead independent and economically productive lives. They help to enable new entrepreneurs, like the ones that you see out there. They're all COSTI clients. And they provide counseling and mental health services in ways that honor lived experience, cultural and racial diversity. So today, as we gather and celebrate the remarkable efforts, dedication, resilience, and determination of women both at COSTI, all of you, male allies, but also across Canada and the world, we're here to commit to doing more to advance gender equity, but to also celebrate everything we've achieved. International Women's Day will officially be recognized on March 8th, and this year the UN has declared Inspire Inclusion as the theme. They've also declared 2024 as a pivotal year to invest in women, and boy, do we agree with that. So I wanted to take a moment and just reflect on this theme of inclusion. What does it mean to inspire inclusion? We cannot inspire inclusion without an equity lens that also looks at exclusion, both systematic exclusion, individual level exclusion, exclusion that is intentional, exclusion that is unintentional. So in other words, we can only inspire inclusion by considering who is being excluded within a critical intersectional lens. Intersectional means we look at all the varied ways that women's lived experience plays out, whether it be religion, accessibility, cultural, linguistic. So a couple of examples, I'll just be brief. We know that racialized immigrant women are earning far less than their male and Canadian counterparts. We have Statistics Canada research to corroborate this, and their employment outcomes are the lowest. So when we're planning employment, skills training programs, how are the narratives and lived experience and the expertise of immigrant racialized women shaping those programs? We should be asking that. Are they at the table? If they're not at the table, what's wrong? We know that diverse women are less represented in leadership tables. So when they're there, we should be asking, should we have more? How can we have? But also when they're there, are they able to speak? Are they able to be acknowledged? Are they listened to? Because we know that when women are in leadership roles, they're characterized and judged differently than men. We know that Indigenous women are amongst the most marginalized systematically in this country, our First Nations people. So when we're incorporating, developing programs, strategies, are we looking at truth and reconciliation throughout the year, or are we just thinking about it just before September 30th? So an inclusive approach would actually say who's being excluded in looking at Indigenous communities. We know that Black women and entrepreneurs have less access to funding and to capital. Again, the data is out there. So when we develop programs, funding programs, capital for entrepreneurs, how are we including Black women voices? Are they getting funding? And lastly, when we look at gender-based violence programs, we know that the proportion of gender-based violence is very high for women with disabilities, for women in long-term care. So are women with disabilities, are older women considered as part of that narrative, as part of developing programs? These are all the ways, a few examples to consider how a narrative that looks at inclusion should also look at exclusion, systematically and individually. So in developing today's program, we want to hear from the diverse voices out there. I know Rupa has played a huge role. We want to hear from the front line. We want to hear from leaders, partners, clients, funders. Each of you brings a unique expertise and a lived experience, and we want these collective voices to shape our programs and policies in meaningful ways. Last year, we did something similar, and we took all of the feedback you gave us and others gave us to help inform the planning of the Women's Committee, to help shape COSTI's programs and policies. So please know today, your voice matters, both here today, but every day, the other 364 days of the year beyond Women's Day. So at COSTI, a critical intersectional lens is at the heart of what we do. We have a board that has considered gender so important that they've established a Women's Committee. We have women's-focused programs in employment and skills training, mental health, social circles, and entrepreneurship. And we know that marginalized women need wraparound services. They need a collective community support to enable them to thrive. But we would just be performative if we don't also recognize that we need to do a lot more. At COSTI, we've created a positive space group, an anti-racism and anti-Black racism group, but we need to do a lot more with those groups. And I'm pleased to say that some of the new leaders we hired, it doesn't matter if they're in communications, finance, or any area, they should come with an equity lens if they're coming to COSTI. So our two new leaders, Rubina Yassine and Karen Traboulet, are going to play a role in spearheading that work so that we move further. So in conclusion, I'd like to reaffirm our commitment to gender equity, continue to move things forward. I hope you engage in a conversation today where your voice matters, and you leave here feeling inspired and motivated, because we have a lot of work to do for the other 364 days of the year. And now, without further delay, I'm delighted to welcome on stage our keynote speaker, the Honorable Associate Minister of Small Business, Nina Tangri. Let me share with you some impressive background details about our minister. The Honourable Nina Tangri was elected to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario in 2018 as the Member of Provincial Parliament representing the riding of Mississauga-Streetsville. Nina Tangri is also Ontario's Associate Minister of Small Business. She was the Associate Minister of Housing and in 2021 served as the Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction. And in 2019, she was appointed Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And here is where it gets really exciting. We have somebody who gets social policy. She chairs the Standing Committee on Social Policy. She's also been on the Standing Committee of Justice Policy. And boy, what lived experience. She is a passionate entrepreneur and small business owner herself. So she really gets small business, bringing 35 years of experience in insurance, finance. She was the CEO of Tangri Insurance and Financial Group and the president of Tangri BMT Insurance Brokers. So we are delighted and honored to have our Associate Minister of Small Business, Minister Tangri, who's bringing all of her wealth of experience and knowledge to share today. Minister.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it really truly is my honor to join each and every one of you today. I have to admit, I've only met, I don't think I know anybody here previously, but I've just been sitting at the table for a few minutes with this amazing group of women from all different backgrounds, and I'm completely in awe of the great expertise that we have here in this room. So anyway, I'm going to say welcome to everybody to this year's COSTI Women's Day Conference. I do want to personally, though, thank COSTI's board for hosting this very, very important event to discuss women's entrepreneurship and for their commitment to offering a wide variety of business supports for women. COSTI is such a distinguished history of over 60 years, empowering newcomers from all backgrounds to succeed. I want to commend COSTI's visionary leadership for another outstanding event. The title, Empower Together, speaks so many volumes. By sharing experiences and insights, we do lift each other up. Dr. Kukier is a trailblazer in entrepreneurship. Matisse Hamel-Nellis is a champion for accessibility and inclusion. And I really do look forward to hearing more from Richarungta's impactful work in human resources, all which play a key role, whether it's in entrepreneurship or in the professional field. You all do play a vital part of empowerment and advocacy. So I can tell you, as my time as Associate Minister of Housing, I've really seen the challenges that refugees face while resettling in our province. And our government is very happy to hear from and support organizations ensuring newcomers feel welcomed and empowered to fully participate. I thank COSTI for all that you do to help people in this province succeed and for bringing together so many women small business owners. Small businesses are very critical to our province's economy and success. You form the backbone of our economy as small businesses employ more than 2.2 million people. Women's involvement, our involvement in the economy depends on the ability to participate without barriers, especially in entrepreneurship where women are very underrepresented. To help women-owned businesses succeed, our government has implemented the Women's Economic Security and Investing in Women's Futures program. That's a lot of words, but it's a great program. So from 2022, yes, to 2023 alone, our programs have helped over 3,500 women gain employment, start businesses, or pursue further training and education. But personally, I do know the effort and the sacrifice that it takes to get a business off the ground. And when I started my business, I had no idea there were supports out there. I had no idea we had a small business enterprise center, that you could get government funding, there were options available to me. I just drudged and did it alone with my husband. But, you know, we've been very successful, and I'm very happy that we've been able to do that without the supports. But you know what? English is my first language. So for somebody who's coming here who wants to be an entrepreneur where English is not your first language, there are so many barriers that are in your place. So as a small business, I know I get off track of my notes here, I know that it takes a certain drive. It takes a lot of determination to get a business off the ground and to keep it running. So I'm really happy to be part of a government that's committed to creating the right conditions so that businesses can thrive. That's why we've cut red tape to reduce burdens confronted by businesses that impact your bottom line. We've also worked to lower taxes, reduce electricity costs, and taken together, these actions saw $3.6 billion in cost savings last year just for small businesses. And defining small businesses, that's 98% of our businesses that employ under 100 people. So everything that we do, we put a very small business lens and a business lens on whether we have new legislation, amending legislation, or removing legislation that just gets in your way. So in addition to that, our government's making investments in programs to help businesses access capital and focus on ways to increase competitiveness and get results. Through Futurepreneur Canada, we're supporting the next generation of bold business leaders by providing access to mentorship, loan capital worth up to $20,000, and the opportunity to leverage an additional $40,000 from the Business Development Bank of Canada. Ontario has 47 small business enterprise centres who provide entrepreneurs with business consultations, workshops, and seminars to help start, purchase, or grow a business. And in addition, the centres deliver 2 programs, which include Starter Company Plus, where entrepreneurs can receive hands-on mentoring, training, and access up to $5,000 in grants, and Summer Company, where students can explore entrepreneurship through launching a business over the summer months with training, advice, and a $3,000 grant. So we've made great progress, but we know there's still a lot of work that we need to do. Ontario is an amazing, diverse province, and we recognize the women in business and the great importance that they play. I really look forward to connecting and hearing how we can work together to explore new, innovative ways to empower women entrepreneurs like yourselves and help drive our economy forward. And I just want to talk a little bit about Premier Ford and our government. So we talk about how we want to uplift women. And the Premier has taken it upon himself to make sure that he has women in key leadership portfolios within our government. Our Deputy Premier and the Minister of Health, the largest ministry, Sylvia Jones, a female. The Minister of Colleges and Universities, Jill Dunlop. The Minister of Agriculture, Lisa Thompson. The Minister of Infrastructure, Kinga Surma. The Women's Social and Economic Security, Charmaine Williams. And myself. We really take it upon ourselves, and we're not just at the cabinet table, and I know I heard in your remarks earlier, we speak. We open our minds, we listen to what the others have to say, but we're not shy to say, we think this is right for the people of Ontario, this is the direction we would like to see the province go, and it's making a huge difference when you have such great voices at the table. Not just the women, we have amazing people from very diverse professional backgrounds as well. So having all of those perspectives when we're in government is absolutely key. But we can't do it alone. We need to listen. We need to listen to our great organizations like COSTI. We need to make sure that you are part of our plans, that you are part of what we need to do to make sure that we can encourage those refugees, those newcomers, or our next generations, and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to succeed in this great province. Because you know what? Ontario really is the best province in the entire world to live, to work, to raise a family, to invest, and to own a business. So thank you to each and every one of you for inviting me today. It really is my honor, and I look forward to seeing. I'm just going to head out very quickly. Unfortunately, I have another meeting, but I do want to go meet all those wonderful entrepreneurs outside. So thank you once again for inviting me. Thank you for being so kind. Please reach out anytime. Our office is open. We need to hear from you. Let us know what you'd like to see from our government. Right? It's important that we listen. So thank you again. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you for the work you do.
Too often women feel that they have to go it alone, and they don't. They don't understand sometimes there are some great networking, there are great organizations like COSTI, and many, many ways that they can reach out and find supports to help them start their business or grow their business, get an online presence. And I think sometimes we just need to be there for each other as women to help lift each other up. And so it is tremendously important. As I've talked to some of the wonderful vendors here today, I think COSTI has played such an important part of them being able to get their businesses off the ground.
Now I would like to introduce one of our clients to join me here. She's going to share with us her journey to Canada. She is also one of the vendors displaying her services and goods outside, but I'd like to introduce Ashraf Shibani.
Welcome, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today as part of this very important event. In our world, diversity isn't just a trendy word. It's essential for progress. Empowering women is the key for a more inclusive and prosperous future. Today, we gather to recognize women's incredible contributions and brainstorm ways to lift their voices, expand opportunities, and break down barriers. By investing in and empowering women, we open doors in various areas of life, from technology and finance to healthcare, education, and entrepreneurship. Empowering women is the key to our collective success. 3 years ago, amidst the coronavirus, amidst the challenges of coronavirus pandemic, I found myself in Toronto, leaving behind my role as an associate professor of Persian language and literature in the University of Tehran. Adjusting to a new time zone and teaching online, I felt the weight of my homeland even as I embarked on a new chapter in Canada. During those early days, I juggled my teaching schedule, which now spanned from midnight to the early hours of morning, with adapting to a new life at new country. My attempts to blend in often involved pretending to have a hoarse voice to avoid conversations, a humorous tactic born out of my struggles with homesickness and cultural adjustments. While searching online for educational opportunities, I stumbled upon COSTI's online classes and discovered the diverse range of programs they offer. Intrigued, I enrolled in the applied digital and media skills, digital literacy programs, conversation circles that I need so much, and job search preparation workshops. Additionally, I completed the women-specific employment training, customer service course. Throughout this time, my heart gravitated towards something that was familiar to me, yet long been neglected: painting. Painting, a passion I developed many years ago after graduating high school. Despite the demands of academia, I had always cherished this artistic pursuit. The pandemic provided the catalyst for its revival, promoting me to reignite my love for painting amidst the challenges of immigration and settling into a new country. With the generosity of a friend who lent me their garage, I found renewed hope in creating a space for artistic expression. However, the journey was not without its disappointments, as my aspiration for a staging business faltered amid market fluctuations. Nevertheless, through solo and group exhibitions, I found validation and purpose in sharing my art with others. Yet my aspirations extend beyond personal success. I'm driven to preserve culture and tradition through antique restoration and carpentry. Each brush stroke carries the essence of emotions, joy, sadness, and the vibrant force of life. My journey has been a kaleidoscope of experiences, and while the path forward may seem clearer, there are still dreams waiting to be realized. As I reflect on my journey, I am thankful for the incredible support of those who have listened to my story, believed in my vision, and believed in me. I am grateful to COSTI for giving this opportunity to let me tell my story, and for giving me the opportunity to share some of my art with you. I look forward to meeting many of you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashraf. Now I'd like to invite Janet Hallett, one of our senior directors at COSTI, to introduce our panelists, our moderator, and we can begin our panel discussion.
I would like to take this opportunity to start introducing our panelists. And as I say your name, could you possibly come up and take a seat? Okay. So we have Matisse Hamel-Nellis. She is a Matisse communicator consultant, a PR professor at Durham College, and a dynamic host of PR at Lattice Podcast, a vice president of Inclusive Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Committee at IBAC Toronto. She shapes the policy fostering inclusivity in the professionalism. Welcome. Richa, may I ask you to come up? Richa Runtang is a recruiter at Accenture Canada, and she specializes in talent acquisition for Industry X and corporate function services. Prior, Richa served as a HR specialist at UPS, her first job after relocating from Kathmandu. In Nepal, she played pivotal roles in growing commercial banks for 9.5 years and raising to deputy head of HR. Relocating to Canada was a significant decision and drawing its welcoming culture and opportunities. Today, Richa is grateful to call Canada home, embracing the challenges and building a better future for her family and in the vibrant and supportive environment. Welcome. Priya, can I ask you to come up, please? Priya Bates is an award-winning communicator and president of the Inner Strength Communication, excels in driving internal performance. She's a co-author of Building Culture of Inclusivity, and she crafts strategic plans for internal communications, engagement, branding, and transformation change. As a co-founder and a leader like me, she fosters community collaboration, confidence, and encourages drive inclusive cultures. Welcome. And if I can ask Anoli, if you can come on up. Anoli Ndubusi is a professor, manager, and an educator, an engineer, and a PhD researcher at University of Toronto. Anoli is a certified project manager professional with a master's in business administration from Manchester University and combines 20 years of experience in the engineering professional in education and research. Anoli leverages her experience with global and academic in settings and people to build professionalism and goal competencies that are essential for the 21st century and global economy. Welcome. I should mention that their full bios are actually in your complimentary pamphlets there, so there is more to read about them and their experience. But welcome, panel. I'd like to introduce now the moderator of the panelist, and that is Rupa, and you were introduced to Rupa Banerjee. Rupa is a member of the COSTI Board of Directors and chair of the Women's Service Committee. Rupa is Canada's research chair in the economic inclusion of immigrants and associate professor of the Department of Human and Resource Management at the Ted Rogers School of Management. She studies the employment experience of immigrants and racialized Canadians, both from the perspective of highly skilled immigrants as well as temporary foreign workers. Would you like to come stand up here? So welcome to all.
Thanks so much, Janet. I'm so excited for this panel. I have just so many questions, but I only have a small list, which I have to stick to, unfortunately. But hopefully this will also generate more fulsome discussion
and we can have a really great conversation here today. So all of you are experts in equity, diversity, inclusion in a variety of ways, in your own ways, and many of you also have your own experience with migration, with inclusion, and so I'm going to ask you a few questions, both from your professional experience, but also from your personal experience. So my first question is for Anuli. So Anuli, how have you been able to harness your global experiences to help your transition to life in Canada? So how has your kind of unique perspectives helped you overcome the challenges that you've encountered during your immigration journey?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I've had a broad experience. My immigration career started in Nigeria, where I worked with Shell International, business analysis and project management roles. And then I moved on to the US for 4 years, and where I worked in global engineering projects across various locations and trained project team members. Thereafter, I immigrated to Canada and enrolled in my PhD program. So through these extensive experiences, I've gained intercultural competencies and global competencies, which I leverage in my academic career right now. So I teach second-year engineering students, engineering design and leadership, and I leverage those skills and competencies in my research. So an aspect of my research is helping students develop these global competencies and professional skills through virtual engagements with diverse students across the world. I also research Black post-secondary students' experiences and learning outcomes to help see how we can improve them in the Canadian institutions. I also work with diverse women, minority women, to study how their academic trajectories have been impacted in the Canadian institution. And for me, I see my strengths, I utilize my strengths, and I leverage the support systems that I encounter in these spaces to grow and develop myself. So I have different groups I work with. I work with a group in engineering where we build international project teams for students. I also work with another equity group in engineering where we support faculty members and graduate students on leveraging graduate education opportunities, research opportunities, and determining career pathways that are best suited for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really impressive. I just love how you were able to use your own personal experiences to actually incorporate into the research you do and the work you do professionally. That crossover between personal and professional, I think, is something that many of us experience. But of course, it's not an easy road. And so I'm going to turn next to Matisse. What are some of the key obstacles that you see that actually prevent us from achieving equity, diversity, and most importantly, inclusion?
That's a great question. Can you hear me okay? No? We'll just do this. Hello. So I think one of the biggest obstacles is the lack of education and awareness. We can't expect people to change what they don't know and what they don't know how to change. So definitely education and awareness is a big key in that. The next is systematic inequality. It's something that's been built over generation and generation, and it's very hard to just simply snap your fingers and change it. And then there's also the whole concept of the resistance of change. People who have benefited from these inequalities and this lack of inclusion and diversity are scared of what could potentially happen. So there's that resistance to that, which again comes from the lack of awareness and education of what it could actually bring, right? When we think about change and being inclusive and diverse and equitable and accessible, I'm gonna throw that in there, it opens up the doors for so much, and I think what people miss out on, particularly businesses and corporations, is that bottom line and how it's actually gonna benefit. Another obstacle that we do face when it comes to being truly inclusive, equitable, and diverse is the fact that there's this risk aversion to it. We don't know what's gonna happen if we embrace it. And it's a little bit different than the education and awareness piece. It's being able to say, we're going to take that leap. We're willing to do that. And it takes a lot of things to be put into motion to be able to do that. And that comes also from the lack of accountability, saying that we're going to do something versus actually doing something. And the final one that I will mention is tokenism versus actually being inclusive, diverse, and equitable. Are you picking people? Are you doing projects and initiatives because you want to create change? Or is it a matter of that's what people want to see? If it's a matter of just doing something for the sake of pleasing people, but in your own house, let's say, in your company or organization, you don't have women in leadership, or you don't have people with disabilities or diversity within your leadership or throughout your organization, then what are you really doing? It's more tokenism than actually being truly and genuinely accessible, inclusive, diverse, and equitable.
Thank you so much. These are complicated issues, but yeah, really, thanks for bringing them forward. I'm going to turn to Richa. So, as an HR professional with lots of HR experience, and as a newcomer yourself at some point, what's really influenced your approach to EDI in your professional life?
Okay, let me try this. Am I okay?
Yes,
okay.
I think it's working.
Great, yeah, thanks. So, my approach to inclusion, diversity, and equity, it's very much influenced by my personal experience, my education, and from the diverse background that I come from. Starting with like when my family and I decided to relocate to Canada almost now, 4.5 years back. I didn't know where to start from, right? Like there were so many things on my plate. Taking care of my kids, looking for a place to live, finding a source of income. It was more like a puzzle, and we're just trying to put the pieces together. No idea whom to connect, where to go, right? But again, when we decided to relocate to Canada, I did know that I'll be starting from zero, although I had like almost 10 years of experience in a commercial bank back home, right? So here I was like, what I thought was like, all my skills might not be transferable. So maybe start focusing on those transferable skills from which I can start my job search. So that was my first step. Second one was more of understanding and accepting that everything is not in my control. Because as a woman, I think most of the time we are so harsh on ourselves and we forget that we can't do everything, right? So I started focusing on things that's on my control, like working on my resume, applying for jobs, networking. These were the things I could do. So work hard for those. But again, after getting number of rejection emails, maybe hundreds, right? Unsuccessful interviews, it was very challenging to stay motivated. But after every step, like I used to keep on remind myself that it's okay. You did what you could do from your end, right? But again, getting that position is out of your hand. So let's try to take it as more like a journey. So I don't say I was successful every time, but I just kept reminding myself because I had to keep moving, right? Like I just couldn't give up. So that was something that really helped me. Third, I would say networking. For us as a new immigrant, we don't know anyone out here. So we need to put that extra effort on creating those connections, right? And again, for me, like I can speak for myself, I was always hesitant on reaching out to people, letting them know what I am looking for, right? More of, I would say, culturally, that was the way I was brought up. But when I started speaking out, reaching out to people that, hey, this is what I'm looking for, right? They might not have something immediately, but again, they might know someone who has that open role. So I would say it's okay to reach out, you know? Like someone said, like it's different language, right? So we are maybe scared of being judged or maybe scared of being doing some mistake, but I say it's okay. You know, it's okay to reach out because that's something that helped me to get my first job out in Canada. So today, I'm so fortunate to be part of an organization which is working towards gender equal workforce by 2025, right, led by a woman CEO And at my current role, I can continue advocating for women from different backgrounds like I am from, right? Doing what I can do from my end, connecting with women from different backgrounds in these platforms and sharing my experience and the information that I have and just being part of everyone's journey. So yeah, glad to be part of this event and looking forward if I can help with any of the questions you have. Yeah, thanks.
Really helpful. What I find amazing. Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. What I find amazing is, yesterday's newcomers are today's Canadians, right? So the same people who perhaps 5 years ago or 10 years ago were facing the struggles that you're describing, Richa, then become the professionals that we rely on for the next generation of newcomers to succeed. So that's just so important. I'm going to turn to Priya. Priya, how can we get others to be the allies we need them to be? I mean, we see for the first time, I think, more men at this event than ever before, which is so fantastic. But how do we actually make this support more widespread and get others to be allies?
That's such a great question. You can hear me just fine? So I think it's really, first of all, an ally is not something you say about yourself. It's about something you do. So we always talk about allyship. It's behaviors and actions on how to be an ally, and one of the things that we need to realize is that we're so much stronger together than we are apart. That sometimes when we're going through these battles, we think it's up to us and we can't rely on others. But the reason you're all in this group today is because it's in the community that you get the strength. And that involves everyone who is willing to help. And I know that, the men who are in this room today, the fact that you can come and keep a hand up. One of the things we've talked about for a long time is it used to be, so you talked about the new immigrant, or today's immigrant is tomorrow's Canadian. I came here when I was 3 years old. And I am, very much identify as Indian, which is where I came from, but as very much Canadian, because I've been here for more than 50 years of my life. And I realized that when I was growing up, it felt like I needed to pretend I was somebody different and not be myself. And you had this point where you tried to fit in, and now there's a power in standing out, because you give up a lot of yourself when you don't take the time to be who you are and give everything you are. So I encourage people to ask for help, work together, and then be yourself, because I think that's really important.
Wow, really important words. So what I really picked up from you, Priya, which is a kind of crucial part of inclusion, is that we have to bring our entire selves, whether it's to the workplace or to other aspects of our lives. We can't expect inclusion to be assimilation. We're not all going to be the same, and we shouldn't be. That's not what Canada's about, right? So I'm going to turn it over to questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions about equity, diversity, inclusion for any of the panelists that we can get the conversation started?
Thank you all for sharing. So as a male, what I'd like to know is, are men today, and I'm glad to hear the word inclusion. It's really, really important, especially in the work we do here at COSTI, but in society in general. But I'd like to hear, are men today, in your lives and in your work, more of a barrier or an ally?
I can start. And he's not here, so that's okay. He's busy working. So I'm married. My husband is probably my biggest ally, my biggest supporter. And that's not for an aw moment, but from a professional standpoint.
I was going to say, not so much like in your personal life, but men in general.
Yes, yes. But in my experience, similar to my husband, I was going there, similar to my husband, surprisingly, most of the men that I have encountered have been uplifting and wanting to see the best in what I'm able to do, as well as my other women colleagues. There have been those experiences where it wasn't that case, but overall, I have to say the allyship that I've experienced from men in my professional world have been extraordinary, to be honest with you, which I appreciate. I'm very lucky and fortunate to have that experience, but I do also have those, not so great ones, but they won't be discussed as much. I'll focus on the positive because that's, the allyship that helped bring me up was what was there.
Anybody else? Yeah. I think that, a lot of the work that I do, it has been traditionally, I spent most of my life in corporations. So it's not unusual to be sitting around a table of executives and be sometimes the only woman, that's happening less and less, but definitely most of the time I'm one of the only people of color around the table. And I think what we need to understand is the difference between intent, because I don't think there's a lot of people, maybe I'm the optimist too, I don't believe people are wanting to be evil, right? Like I believe in really good people who are trying their best every day. But what they're trying to do is deal with a lot of change. And when we talk about change, we talk about like, in our field is Kubler-Ross. Whenever something happens that changes in your world, it starts with shock, and then denial, and then anger, and then resistance before you get to acceptance. And that's human. So when you think of the changes that have happened, and the changes to how people see things, and the rhetoric, right? All of the conversations that are trying to divide us, I think what we need to think of is how do we meet people one-on-one on a human level? Because even when we can't, and the most important thing is that we have to have conversations, right? The conversations have to continue, because as long as we're not talking and saying the men are, bad and they're standing in our way, I don't think that's necessarily intentional. I think we need to talk to each other to understand each other in order to move forward. And I've been privileged to have incredible leaders that I've had the opportunity to work with in my entire career, and had conversations with people around my dinner table, including family, who may be on a different page and think that they're being attacked, right? So those conversations are happening every day. It's just we have to keep talking and trying to understand each other so that we can support each other.
Anyone else? We have any other questions?
We have a question here.
Hi, I wrote some down, so I'll start with one. Would you be able to share some experiences or examples that have actively, you would say, inspired you to contribute to positive change in our society? We'll start with that.
Okay, so who would like to take that? Yes, Anuli, go ahead.
So thank you for that. For me, it has been my research group at the university. So I have a fantastic supervisor, and he has a very diverse team of more than 20 candidates, and also an alumni that supports each other. And so what I found is that the diversity in the group accelerates the inclusion. So the more diverse the group, the more people are open and willing to support each other. And that has motivated me to seek out and try and get more people involved and get more diverse voices in the table. And that has been the springboard for me to try and work with other departments to see how we can get more diverse students into graduate studies and research opportunities. Thank you.
Anyone else have any inspiring stories or incidents that they would love to share?
How many of you are parents? What do you guys think of the conversations your kids are having with you around the table? Right? Even though I consider myself pretty, progressive, I get called out at the table, and my poor husband, who's red hair, freckles, and blue eyes, gets called out by the girls who are 18 and 21 all the time, because I am so excited about this next generation, Generation Z and Generation Alpha that's coming following them, and how they think is so incredibly different, and how they accept people. And we're going to hear a lot more about intersectionality, that we're not put into groups, but that they see people as everything that they are, and see the opportunities and the possibilities. That's what really inspires me right now.
Okay, thank you. And on that, just because you touched on that, what advice would you have for us to continue the conversation with our youth to sort of, because that was my next question, so it kind of goes into it, just to continue encouraging that conversation, not just within our homes, but outside as well with the youth, the clients, everybody that is a younger generation that doesn't necessarily get it like we do.
I think the younger generation does get it more than we do, quite honestly. Very much, right? They really, but what I would say to everyone is listening. Like, we spend a lot of time talking, but we need to spend more time listening and trying to understand perspectives and building that empathy muscle, so that we can understand from other people's perspectives.
Yeah,
great
just
point.
to add on, inclusion, I believe it's more of accepting people how they are, right? Because, and like Priya mentioned, like that's what younger generation they have. They don't have this prejudgment. They accept people as they are, which we had to put an effort later and learn. So yeah, I think they're already there. Thanks.
Definitely. Any other questions for our panel?
We have one question here.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, like, in more for all of us at the frontline level, when we are helping clients, especially newcomers, many of them see role reversal. Like, sometime when they come here, women end up finding job first while their counterparts, their spouses. And for many, it is really a very difficult situation to accept, because they may be coming from societies, or their previous life experience was that they were the breadwinner. And all of a sudden, there's this role reversal. So how would you suggest us in terms of as a staff, in helping in those clients in dealing with their various life situations? And how, if any of the women present here are experiencing it in their life, what suggestion would you have for them? I open it to all the panelists.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's a tough one. Who wants to take that?
I can somewhere relate to that, right? So maybe I'll take it first. It is kind of challenging, especially the culture and background that even I come from, and most of, like, you also are from that part of the world. So I think it's important for us to set the priority, because there are few basic things that we must do when we come as a new immigrant. That is survival, right? So we as a woman, somewhere I had to take that strong step that, maybe we are not aligned to that decision, but that time there was many situations where I had to take one step forward and say that this is what I feel is right, and we need to take this up, right? So those are the few places where I had to speak out my mind and take the step forward, and then get into the conversation. But again, somewhere, because it's so many things going on, so much of struggle going on, like we are in different pace of mind. So, because if you calm down and think, then yeah, you get into that alignment, but there are times where we might not. So just taking that pause, and understanding when you need to take that step and then get into the conversation and get there.
I think the only thing I was at an event, so I'm not going to take credit for this. I was at an event Saturday, and a woman who was speaking, and she's a recruiter for Tesla. And she was talking about the fact that she learned anthropology, which seems unrelated, but she said something that really hit close to me. She talked about the fact that men grow up with ego and women grow up with empathy. And that it's really, so sometimes when we think of, we see the ego coming up, that we try to approach it with ego in order to meet it, and usually that's creating a clash. But what she said is one of the things, especially as women, that we're uniquely able to do is if we meet ego with empathy and listen and ask questions and ask why, we get to a different conversation that helps create connection. And I really loved that because it was the first time I'd heard that before, that we really need to use empathy to understand where that ego is coming from and why. And then once we understand why, then we can address those issues away from the ego.
Wow, that's fantastic advice. Yes, Rahila.
Here. Maybe I'll give you a mic.
We have a recording for the recording.
There was a reason I still ask this question because so many of my colleagues, they are helping clients who are women, and because women end up taking a back seat in the name of empathy, in the name of peace, in the name of keeping the family together, that by the time they are ready to look after themselves, they are not even eligible for so many services which are offered by the federal government. And that is a reality which you can, if you talk to many of the frontline workers, you will hear every day. So that's why I asked this question that yes, empathy, keeping harmony, keeping the family together are all very important. But in reality, many of women do end up taking a back seat. Thank you.
Do any of you have anything to add about that? It's a very tough and complicated situation.
It is tough. Like, I think that applies even if you're, most women will probably agree in this room, myself included, that even though I've been very, very successful, I'm still the one who takes on most of the child rearing and everything else. So it's something that we need to work through together, but I think that the opportunity is focusing on the client that you're working with and building that courage and confidence, because they're going to be the one who has to deal with that situation and what that means at home.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
I was just going to add, Rahila, is that in my kind of research experience, I think for settlement frontline workers to be very upfront with clients about the marital strife that comes with such a big life change as movement, as moving to a different country. That a lot of people aren't prepared for that. They're prepared for trying to find a new job. They're prepared for getting their kids into school, finding housing. But the fact that it's going to be really tough on the relationship and that relationship aspect of it, I think is sometimes lost. And I know that all of you are doing really important work in various aspects of settlement, but that relationship aspect of settlement, to the fact that it is going to be tough on a marriage, on a relationship, I think is something that maybe can be discussed with clients right from the beginning.
And I want to add to that, it's not just enough to discuss it with women clients. I think also the male clients needs to have this discussion to recognize that these are the challenges they're going to face in this environment. I think once they have a pre-idea of what they're going to face, they can begin to gradually go through the stages that you mentioned, the shock, the denial, and soon enough come to acceptance and engage in those conversations with the women to see how they can eventually make it work.
Really important.
We actually have a question that follows up to that one.
I just wanted to ask, just circle back on the questions asked about the participation of our male counterparts. And so a lot is expected of women, either in the family settings or workplace, to advocate for themselves, to see where the priorities are, when it's needed to take a backseat and everything like that. But there's not a lot of conversation about men. And I think a lot of these problems can be somewhat modified if there is better education for men to come to terms with equality and have a more active role in empowering women, recognizing it, empowering them, and being part of the solution. So what do you recommend to having men more involved in this conversation? Because most of us, I think, we are aware of this, but we are only women here. I just see a couple of male faces here. and the rest is women. I don't think women talking about women is the solution.
Who would like to take that?
I can start with, this is more of, again, based on my personal experience and my thought, right? And this goes back to what I said. What is in my control and what's not my control, right? So any situation, I feel like, even how my husband behaves with me, right? It's in my control how I talk to him. But how he talks to me, that's not in my control. We as a woman, we think that we have control of everything. We think that, oh, if I talk nicely to someone, that should be reciprocated, right? Maybe that should come in the same way. But I think practically that doesn't happen, right? I can just create a boundary and said that, okay, these are the things that, I'm gonna take it. But these are, I'm not. So I understand, having men in the conversation, but again, I feel like first we need to have that strength and what we want to speak out for, have our own boundaries and take that step, and then, yeah, I feel like that will be reflected somewhere. That's completely my, personal experience. Right?
I think that's what's hard about this this conversation is most of the work that I do, and we have my personal experience with my family union, but then I've got my work that I do in corporations, and so it's not necessarily that one-on-one what's happening in the home. But if I was talking to leaders in an organization who are mostly men, it really starts with what does success look like? Right? That's the first question that we ask. What are we trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to do? And then what is the role that each of us has to play in order to get there? It's also what could go wrong. What is it, how do we move towards that goal, and how do we keep talking about recognizing those milestones, those steps forward, and then picking ourselves up from the steps backwards. And it's more of a back and forth. It's not like one magic solution that we're going to be able to answer, but at least if we've got a vision, at least if we know where we're going and what our role is to get there together, maybe we can have a different kind of conversation. And that's me talking from a corporate hat on, but trying to see if I can connect it to what you're talking about.
We have a question over here.
Actually, it is not a question, but a small comment, if I may. I've been teaching English to new immigrants for many, many years. And what I know, that really what you just said is absolutely true. Women are the first to find employment. At the same time, it is very hard for men to find this first employment because they have to understand that they go a step down from their position in their country. And they cannot accept that. Women can, because we are all mothers. We know that we have to supply for the family no matter what. We have children and the same husbands, sometimes as our children too, that we have to feed. So that's why women go first. But as I said, I am an English teacher to many immigrants. And here is one example that I would really love to share because it matches our conversation greatly. Many years ago, I had a family in my class, a husband and wife from somewhere in the East. So the husband was very patriotic, as a patriarch, right? So he didn't want his wife to study very much. He would cover his writing, and she didn't understand much. And I called them Alpha and Beta because I couldn't pronounce very, very long Indian names. So I just, and they agreed. And so every day I would ask to check the comprehension. I would ask this woman, how many children do you have? And she would say 3. And the next day she would say 7. And one more day she would say 15. So I knew that she didn't understand anything. The man was smiling, but didn't help. Then one day, In maybe 2 months, she started understanding. She said, I said, Beta, how many children do you have? She said, 3. And Alpha, her husband, nodded. She was so happy that he nodded and she understood. The whole class applauded to her. Then, during the break, she came up to me, she dragged me to a coffee shop, bought me a coffee that I didn't want her to pay, but she insisted. And then she said, proudly, she said, English, freedom. And for me, this is such an important event that happened in my teaching life that I wanted to share. So for many, many immigrants that come here, for women, and men too, but mostly for women, it is very hard to make their first steps unless they speak just a little bit of English to be understood, to be accepted in this society. So I think we have to pay very much attention, seeing people that struggle to utter 1 or 2 words and help them out in the outer world, not only in the classroom. Then they will be happier and they will say, English, freedom.
Thank you for that story. Sorry, Anuli, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, I was going to add that mentorship plays a big part here. So having and encouraging men to mentor their fellow men, especially those who have been here longer, who have encountered these issues, who have identified solutions on how they have addressed them, can help mentor the newcomers and prepare them for what they are likely to encounter. I think the key challenge sometimes is people are not aware, and then when the issues emerge, conflict arises. However, if they are prepared ahead of time, they might have strategies already in place, and they can engage in meaningful conversations with their partners on how to address them.
Wonderful, yeah, absolutely. And I would add that maybe some of those conversations need to be pre-arrival even before landing in Canada.
It is so important to make sure that we stand back and we really think through the issues facing newcomer women specifically. What we learned today is it's a whole family experience, and it's not just about language classes, getting employment. There's a lot of social services required for the cultural change because not everyone is ready for the change and may not have additional resources. We can tap them into those resources. Our team, our frontline workers are the first contact to give them the helping advice that they need to make sure that settlement is just a little bit easier for them. I think that the panelists were very, very focused on equality and diversity, and I think, bringing your full self to your work and giving everybody an opportunity. So this is the first women's conference where we've invited men. So even we are now opening up and allowing more people to engage in conversation because, again, this is a full family effect, not just for women. Women still hold a lot of the responsibility of the family. There's added pressure. Sometimes they need additional support. The panel discussion helped reconfirm that for our entire COSTI team, and recognizing that we need to make sure that we look at the full picture, not just for the women.
I think it's really important for events like this that COSTI is hosting today, where women can come together, they can network together. But it's also important for people like myself in government to hear from all of these wonderful entrepreneurs so we can see what some of the challenges that they're facing and how we as a government, how can we remove red tape or regulations, amend things to help more women get businesses off the ground. It's very challenging out there. There's a lot of competition. But you know what? Women are creative, they're very resilient, and we need to make sure that we are there to support them and uplift them as much as we can.
To support other women, that's what my job is. I have the lived experience of a racialized woman, as an immigrant woman, so I try to embolden, support our staff, our clients, through that lens that I bring. As a women leader, my job is to empower women, also male allies. It's to empower their voices. We want to hear from them, not only today, but throughout the year. So as a women leader, it's about inspiring, engaging, and supporting other women.